All right, cool. I think we are live. Let me just do a quick double check. Um,
This is also our
yeah.
first live content. Usually we'll do like pre-recorded stuff and post it on our YouTube channel. So very excited.
Oh yeah, it's exciting. It's a new experience. It's fun. It's like going live. It takes a lot of the pressure off. I think because when you're recording, you're like, I got to get this recording right and stuff like that. I've done both, but I definitely like going live better because there's like leeway, right? You can
Yeah.
improvise.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining, guys. I really like the concept that we were talking about because it's like a Monday kind of market analysis, right? It's like, what are the top markets for the week? Let's do an analysis. Let's see what's going on. And so I think this is perfect timing. So just yeah, maybe if you want to kind of introduce yourselves, what you guys do, and Three Markets Pod, what that's all about.
Go for it.
Sure. So Matt and I are longtime friends. Sort of, spent some time in the crypto trenches, but both shared an interest in game theory and in sort of, markets, market structure, these things. So we just both fell into the prediction market thing pretty deep. I mean, we've been looking at it, even going back to elections, even before this presidential. And I think when we saw kind of the super cycle starting, we were like, let's throw our hats into the ring. So every week, we record an episode of the Three Markets Pod, and each of us will bring three markets, as the name implies. And oftentimes, we haven't seen each other's markets, so it's kind of a way for one of us to have a more informed take on the market, and for the other person to just kind of be brought along with, each other's thinking in kind of being fresh eyes to a market. What we try to do, though, with our content is really two things. We try to do market analysis and then also some industry analysis. So for market analysis, we're trying to tell the story of a market, provide to people the context. There's, you can go so deep on every single one of these markets. And for a lot of us prediction market traders, we have ADHD, we're bouncing from market to market. And we try to kind of, give you the couple minute long explanation of like, why are the odds where they are, especially for, world events and geopolitical markets, political markets, economic markets, et cetera, cultural markets, which Matt has a penchant for as well. And then secondly, to share like the data sources and strategies that traders should be using to have as much edge as they can when they approach those markets. We are both guilty of this, but I think a lot of prediction market traders just look at a market and they kind of just vibe it. Like they just Rick Rubin it, like, oh, I'm feeling like those odds are a little high or a little low. So we're really trying to kind of educate, our audience on how can you approach these markets and give yourself as much edge as possible? What info should you be looking for? How do you find the sort of original source, info sources, et cetera? And then lately, because we just can't help ourselves, we've also been doing some kind of industry news, tracking the growth of the different prediction markets. There's obviously this, feud between the two major platforms on Twitter, and we're kind of following the volume changes for each, new feature announcements, trying to bring on folks. We just did an episode that's a bit of a debate on the insider trading question of whether that's a bug or a feature in prediction markets. So kind of some meta prediction market news as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's it's all topics that have been like super hot recently too, like especially the insider trading. It's been scaling up more and more. I mean, we've just gotten like and it's funny because at the same time it's like, okay, this could be a feature, like exactly what you were saying. Like it's kind of cool that you can make the market in a certain way. And I do feel like there's less like costly externalities because everyone seems to accept it. They're just like, okay, that's fine, whatever. Like we know that there's an insider, but we can still gamble on it. It's which is really interesting to observe. So it's fun to see that play out. But I think what you said, I think like the Three Markets Pod is like valuable, and the reason why I wanted to touch base with you guys is because there's like 7,000 markets that you can analyze on Polymarket. There's a ridiculous amount. I can only keep track of like a few. So it's just fun to get you guys on here and talk about this sort of stuff.
For sure.
So curious too. I'm wondering if we just dive right in to market analysis, see what you guys have been looking at, and I kind of do like a mini episode right here.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think it'd be cool to kind of do. And I know like we might talk about some mention markets later because I know we were talking about potentially doing that too. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and also before jumping into that too, like that's something that Josiah and I like. Another big motivator for this is that we would hop on calls with each other almost every other day to be like, oh, have you seen this market? What do you think about this? And chat about it. So this is also to hold each other accountable on like, how do we think about these markets in the most like, in as sophisticated a way as possible versus just kind of like jumping right into it, and also to challenge each other's assumptions. So whenever we're discussing these things, sometimes we'll probably bring up questions with each other and saying like, hey, do you really believe it's priced fairly? So yeah, excited to do a live, I guess what's virtually like a live episode now.
Wait, let me add to that. Like one thing that Matt shared with me early on, is this Super Forecasters book, and just to point out, as he did to me, that like predictive edge is a skill. Like there are people in the world, the Metaculus crowd and others, who have gotten really, really good at this, and so that's kind of that's part of what we want to teach people is like. This can be a thing where you're not just flipping a coin. It can be a thing that you get better at if you, kind of work hard at it and sort of find out which parts of it you're good at and find the different strategies and tools. And I just think that's so fascinating, that like there are people who just have, we can look at them on the Polymarket leaderboard who just have incredible hit rates and they're doing something right. What are they doing?
Yeah. So did you guys how do you guys initially meet, or how long have you been in the prediction market space? Was this kind of always an interest to you, or were you doing crypto before? And you may have mentioned this already. I apologize if you did, but I'm just curious, like how you found your way in, maybe how you met each other as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was through mutual friends, and also it started off within like the crypto space side of things. Actually, before this too, some between our mutual friends, like Predictit was like another platform that was like very interesting to us. But at the time when we were looking at it, there wasn't enough liquidity. It was just kind of like a fun like thought experiment. I think eventually Predictit did get to a state where there was like enough liquidity that people were participating pretty heavily in it. I could be wrong about that. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But crypto was kind of like the main area. I was really into better understanding MEV, and also how how people were able to like organize blocks when like specifically on the Ethereum blockchain, and seeing how people can capture value by like reorganizing transaction orders within blocks. I never participated in that myself, but it was just something that kind of nerd sniped me. So within crypto, there's just been a few topics that have come up from time to time. And Josiah was actually the one who really like put me back on into prediction markets and saying that like, guys, there's this whole like sub community that's growing pretty strong, and I think this is like the real deal. But yeah, just I don't know if you want to add to that.
I guess more formally, like as the Three Markets pod, we've been doing this for what, Matt, like maybe a month and a half. So still very new to the scene, inspired in many ways by folks like yourself, Polyfactual, trying to bring kind of the content and media arm to prediction markets so that it's not just, trying to connect people together and kind of find the groups of people who are trying to kind of take it seriously and sort of, provide them with almost like, live streams as you do, or even written content. There's some really good written content coming out now, interviews with, expert traders. But to Matt's earlier point, like the kind of impetus for us was just realizing that we're already taking, an hour plus at least once a week to talk through these markets in private. We may as well record the call and put it online and see what happens.
Yeah. That was exactly my initial reason for starting Polyfactual, was because I was like, look, like there's this whole, well, first of all, I got interested in prediction markets because I was like, there's a bunch of money like sitting there, which like no hedge funds are manipulating, right? At least not yet. Like, my brother works at a hedge fund and he's like, no, we're not on that yet. Like it's safe. So like, I saw that and I'm like, okay, I want to get in there. I want to start trading. But if I'm going to trade, I might as well just like create content around the research I'm doing. Because I'm doing a ton of research for prediction markets. You have to like read the news all the time and keep updated. So I think that, similar to you guys, very similar story for me as well. And just, and I think content is like one of the best verticals that you can get into with prediction markets, just because it touches news so well, right? It's like finance and news, and there's so many like monitor the situation moments that happen that prediction markets will be involved in. So I'm excited about what you guys are doing.
Sweet. Thank you.
Great,
Do
yeah.
you think it's time?
Let's look at some markets, baby.
Yeah, just I kind of want to start with yours first. So also polyfactual. So like we are actually, would you prefer polyfactual based Lori?
I'm cool with honestly, I don't even know what to go by. Like, I guess if you want to call me John, that's fine.
Sure, we'll call you John.
John's my first name. I'm fully doxxed, so that's
sweet. John, it is. Yeah. So for when we hop into it, I think that so John, yeah, before normally we would like surprise each other with like these markets and not tell each other, but for this episode we're like, okay, it would be a bummer if both of us hopped on and we had the exact same market and we messaged each other. Sure enough, we did. But I think Josiah's done more research on this than I did. So I'm really excited to hear Josiah's topic. So sorry, Josiah, I'm volunteering you to go first.
It's a good one. This is why we both chose the same one. It's a good one if we both chose the same one. So I woke up this morning as I typically do with the NPR News Minute, the hourly news minute, because they do a good job. It's like, okay, what have I missed as I've been asleep? And I thought I heard something about a Louvre robbery, but I'm still waking up. I was like, did I hear that right? Like, am I listening to some old news? What are they talking about? The Louvre was robbed. So in fact, the Louvre was robbed on Sunday. Let me just grab my notes on this market. This has been like a pretty big story in the past 24 hours, call it. The Louvre is one of the most well-funded museums in the world and purportedly has the best security in the world alongside the Met in New York and the British Museum. And what apparently is happening is as the price of stones and rare metals goes up, museums that house precious artifacts and gems or jewelry are kind of being targeted, or they're being seen as more of a target for these kinds of robberies. So Polymarket, in the editors over there always do a good job, pretty quickly stood up the will any of the Louvre heist robbers be arrested? And our kind of strikes for this are by October 20th, which I guess this market has expired or is nearly expired, October 24th and October 31st. I'll talk in a little bit about why I really wish that there was a later date strike for this. I would love to be able to see the odds for something like by the end of 2026. But first, I'll quickly tell the story of what happened for folks who don't know, which is part of what we like to do. Let me find this piece of content. So this is what happened. This is outside the Louvre. And you can see this cherry picker or this bucket truck here. The robbers, 4 of them, there's so many articles about this. I had to kind of distill it into what happened. Sunday at 9:30 a.m. local time, the museum is open. The Louvre is open. So shortly after it opens, there's visitors in the museum. 4 perps park this basket lift on the side of the Louvre and use it to access a balcony. They force open the window, reportedly using angle grinders. Although we can talk about this, but the reporting has kind of moved so quickly that as folks translate like from original source French articles, there's little instances of kind of like incongruity that you'll see in sort of how the story is told that I think kind of informs how a prediction market trader has to approach this. But it's like right out of an Ocean's movie. They angle grind open the window. They're inside the museum for less than 4 minutes. They know exactly which cases they're going to, and of course these were cases that had certain crown jewels. But specifically, they're not targeting art as much as they're targeting, artifacts that have precious gems. Some of these crowns have like thousands of diamonds on them, etc. They're inside for less than 4 minutes, which is kind of remarkable. And actually important, I think, to the analysis of the market, because folks can immediately speculate this is a professional group. This is like a group, and Europe has some of these groups. As I've been going deeper on it, they have these gangs that specialize in like high profile art and artifact thefts, which is relevant because some of those are already on the radar of the French police or of Interpol, which could give them a bit more of a jump in terms of the question of whether or not there will be an arrest. That is, I guess, the basis of the story. They exited, as I mentioned, after 4 minutes. They were attempting to light the truck on fire, and one of the Louvre security officers successfully stopped them. So there's a piece of evidence left behind, which is the truck. And then it was reported that they took off on motorcycles, and it was reported that one of the motorcycles was either ditched or was left at the Louvre or was somehow otherwise obtained by the investigation force kind of in the hours following this. And this was hard for me to verify because I'm like, okay, if there was a motorcycle left behind, this is probably a pretty good investigative lead in terms of, are they going to get these guys and are they going to do it in the next 10 or 11 days? I had to go all the way to the original source, which in this case was French Broadcast Media. Gotta love it. The channel, I think, was it was C News, which is cnews.fr. And this is something we talk about a bit on Three Markets, which is there is still an edge in going into going to domestic news sources and not just looking at the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, not just looking at American reporting on these things. A lot of the times I'll start there and then, they will source the domestic news source and you can go there and just stick it into ChatGPT or wherever else, have it translate. So I did confirm the investigators have one of the motorcycles and apparently the registration number of the motorcycle. So that, I guess, is pretty much all they have to go off of now. One of the artifacts actually was also dropped outside the museum. So they have pieces of this thing, but for all we know, the guys got away. It's speculated that they're on their way to Antwerp, which is one of the largest kind of underground gem hotspots, exchanges, I guess, in order to start to piecemeal sell these things. But a lot of the times, I guess, when people are caught in these high profile, art heists, they're caught attempting to sell the piece. For the criminals, the hard part is just starting, which is how do they now get rid of these things without being caught? If we're trading this market, though, I'll switch back to the market. If we're trading this market, and our hypothesis is that they will be caught as they, where did I put it? If our hypothesis is that they'll be caught in the attempt to sell or otherwise discard of the stolen artifacts, I don't think that happens in this timeline. Right? Like October 30th. I mean, you're talking about 11 days. Presumably, if they're as professional as it seems like they are, they would know to lay low for quite some time. I've also seen folks point out that, they're likely disassembling these artifacts, which is unfortunate, right? But they're likely not selling them as the artifact. They're likely just going for the raw material. I can pause there. I have a ton of other thoughts as to okay, what hypothesis would you use approaching this market? But I'm curious what you guys think and your reactions to just the initial odds, 24% likelihood that they are arrested by the 31st.
Yeah. Oh, go for it. Go for it, John.
Oh, sorry, Mike, if you want to jump in, you go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was just gonna say quickly, piggybacking off of that. I think there is a certain window, right? There's a certain window of time where it becomes highly improbable that you're going to catch these guys, especially for a professional operation. And I forget what that window is, but it's very short. It's not that long. And then, because there's a whole bunch of other things at play here. And I'm thinking to a lot of these, I'm wondering if you have any data on this too. When it comes to these professional operations, what is the likelihood that these guys typically get caught? Is there a stat that we can go off of that kind of indicates because I'm from Boston. I'm remembering the Isabella Stewart Gardner heist, which was
absolutely
never got caught, never, it completely just gone forever, just completely disappeared. So I'm curious if you have any kind of data on just my general vibe sense when I'm looking at this market.
Totally. It's the exact right question. I think it is. So that's one of the first places I started was to just turn to ChatGPT, be deep research, give me a list of high profile heists, in France or in Europe in the past X number of years and how many are still out. My deep research query didn't do a great job of this for me, but it pointed out that the Louvre itself has several high profile robberies. And one was in, let's see here, it was in 87 or something. And that was never, no arrest was ever made. I'm looking for if I have this. Let me actually share this tab and I'll show you some of my query. The Isabel Gardner one is a great example of a heist where, was that in the 30s? Or I'm sorry, it was in 1990. right?
90s, yeah.
Yeah, and the largest in history, and never, a complete cold trail. Let's see if I can share this tab instead. So I would need to spend more time kind of cleaning up the query here, but for instance, many high-profile heists do eventually result in arrest, and this I guess is counterintuitive actually to what you're saying, John, which is that because these are such big investigations, it is sometimes the case that years later, Interpol or someone else, usually you have a bunch of different international agencies that wind up having to cooperate. And so it kind of takes a long time, and sometimes it's organized crime rings. Separately, though, if it's a sloppy job, or if there's a lot of evidence, it sometimes does happen within weeks. So the way I'm thinking about it a little bit is that they're either arrested inside of 10 days or they're arrested, a year plus later. And this is part of why I kind of wish that our Polymarket for this had additional strikes here, because I would love to set up a strategy where you basically say they're either going to be arrested, in 1 to 2 weeks, or a year plus, because at that point kind of the trail has gone cold. They're probably in another country. Now the French police have to cooperate with other EU agencies. It got complicated, but probably not like, in this period of like 2 months or something. You would have to wonder what happened that would cause them to be caught in like a 2-month period.
Definitely. I'm glad you asked. Also, I'm glad you were mentioning like that. I was thinking the exact same thing too, of like looking back on previous heists, and I think that's like something that Josiah and I talk about a lot when looking at some of these markets. Is like, okay, do we want to take a frequentist approach or take some sort of Bayesian approach with like the information that we have available to us? In a perfect world, you do like a hybrid of the two. The frequentist being like, if we look back in history, like how many times does this happen, and can we get some kind of like baseline like probability to help with this? Or there's a lot of markets that are on Polymarket that actually don't have like too much of a historical background. Like I think there was some markets around like, will there be a nuclear like detonation within the year or something like that. We haven't had too many of those, thankfully, but there's still ways that you can like approach this problem by saying, okay, given these like pieces of evidence, okay, they left one of the motorcycles behind, or maybe they left like a piece behind, that might adjust your prior a little bit and see how that maps to some of this. But yeah, I think that like for me, like if I were to look at like some of these strikes, I would say by October 31st would be, I don't know, probably like 10 percentage points lower for me. I think I'm thinking around like 12%, maybe 10, but that's just from my first like gut check, and also based off of what Josiah just mentioned. But yeah, I think it would be, I wouldn't be surprised if Polymarket does add like a bit more or more strikes here. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I'll let you go. I was just going to add to the frequentist versus Bayesian thing. Like we do talk about this a lot. It's like, you got to start with the historical data. Like that's the exact right instinct to have is, okay, how many art crimes, high profile heists go completely unsolved versus arrests? And then you can even whittle it down to like, because the Louvre has had like 6 or 7 high profile attempts, including the Mona Lisa. You can be like, okay, how many from just the Louvre have been solved? Or you say, okay, it's the same investigating agency in France. How many just within the country of France are solved or aren't? And then you have a nice like baseline, which is your prior. And then we kind of switch into Bayesian mode of like, what's happening today though? Like most of those, so much has changed. If you look at a art heist from the 30s, it's like, okay, this is a decent way to get like a starting ground. One of the things that is, I think, unique to this heist is that it's already been politicized within France. And I was just seeing if I could find this article, but I at least have the quote. So here's a quote from, I guess, the far right National Rally Party leader in France who said, "Oh, the Louvre is a global symbol of our culture. This robbery is an unbearable humiliation for our country." Someone else on one of the Republican parties called it a symptom of a country that cannot protect its heritage. So Macron, who's the sitting president, is in a position of needing to respond to the fact that this is already being politicized as like, the party in power's fault. And that could result in him throwing additional resources after this, or, he wants to get them now. Of course, he wanted to get them before, and now there's even more reason why. And so we kind of adjust our priors, as part of the Bayesian approach.
Yeah, and that might be good too, that it's politicized, because now there's a bit of narrative around it, so you could play that narrative in the short term. at least. And I think it just went up, right? It just went from 23 to 20. No, maybe not. Maybe I was glitching out. Yeah, did it just no?
Yeah, I mean, it's ticking around. It is.
I'd like to think that folks are watching the stream and just going in and cheering based off of that.
Yeah,
something that's odd is this spike. I don't know what this is, except maybe just low volume. But like, last night this market was sitting at like 50%. I wonder, some news had to have been released on this. This could have been the motorcycle. Actually, this could have been when the cultural minister did an interview and basically said we have one of the motorcycles. I could see that kind of causing that pump up.
Yeah, that would cause this spike. I think I'm with you though. I think I think longer timeline for me would be if I were playing this like besides narrative, I would try and look for those longer timelines. I think probably a year out, just based off this conversation, just because it does sound like these operations are kind of hard to crack, especially given the sophistication of it, which was almost comical. But like, yeah, to your point, like the Ocean's 12 like sophistication of it just has me kind of leaning toward a longer time frame.
Totally.
The other meta point about like markets like these, and something that just I love a lot about doing this, is that I think in another situation where we didn't have Polymarket or any prediction markets to work off of, it's possible we wake up, listen to that news, being like, oh wow, it's crazy, the Louvre, there's a heist at the Louvre, and just kind of go on with our day. But because this exists, it's kind of like been I don't want to say forcing function, but it's like a helpful kind of indicator to be like, oh, like what if I did a bunch of research on high profile museum heist, and like what's come of that. Yeah, seriously. We did a weather market, I think a few episodes ago, and I was at a dinner with some friends, and someone was mentioning the differences between El Nino and La Nina, and I had no idea about like the details of any of those until prediction markets, because I was diving so deep into some weather markets previously. But yeah, that's a meta point. I could go on a tangent about that. Just wanted to bring up how great it is to kind of like dig deep into some of these.
No, yeah. I think eventually we're going to have people like literally for their bags, they're going to be trying to like solve the crime themselves. Right. I think it's mass investigation. It's mass investigation. That's for sure.
In terms of resources, like a good place, I think that we start, because by the time you're even looking at the market, sometimes markets like this, where it's a real breaking news event, there's so much noise. Like I'm bouncing between these articles, and some of them, frankly, some of them, I think said they used chainsaws to get in the windows. Like there's bits of information, even amongst credible reporting agencies, just because it's such a real time thing. And it's good, for folks to just orient themselves as much as they can to like what actually has happened here. We use, frankly, like Grok and ChatGPT a lot to do that, in terms of just like give me the timeline of events. We did this even like with the Lord Miles market. I don't know if you saw this, the desert fast situation that was contested multiple times. I'm like, okay, this is moving way too quickly for me. Like Grok, just like break down a timeline of like what has all happened. I'm trying to read the chart and understand the swings. And for one like this, I do find Wikipedia, it does like a pretty good job of this. Of course, you wouldn't want, by the time something has made it into the Wikipedia edit, there's no edge there. That's definitely widely realized. But when you're just trying to bring yourself up to date of like, okay, I've been looking at them, I'm trying to understand what this spike was, and I'm just trying to get caught up before I can then start to kind of like think about what sources I would go to for more information. Wikipedia is a decent place to start, and then kind of go deeper.
Interesting. Like, is there any evidence on like who lists these markets? Like, because I know Polymarket like does some, but I'm, like has some approved listers, but it's like what markets make it in, like, this is a high profile thing. Obviously it's high profile, but at what point did it enter into Polymarket? Did it enter in before it picked up steam, or like, do we know the point at which it kind of entered the, entered the market? So you could have managed to get right in before that 50% spike right there.
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, what is the publication date? Like, okay, October 19th at 11:15 a.m. That's my local time, I guess. I do kind of wish that there was a better history of, kind of exactly when the market launched.
You could
But
probably
that's
get that through Dune. Like we could probably like query for that and see. And maybe that'd be good to have for us to just have a little dashboard that shows when these markets launched. But I don't know if you could see it in the UI here.
Yeah. I've always thought that there's more to be done with overlaying, point of interest media stories right on the chart. In part just for a person consuming this to understand. Like, again, you look at it and you're just immediately wondering, what is this spike? It'd be nice to see, a little link right on the chart to the fact that, an investigator is now saying that they have the motorcycle as a news consumer, but then also, of course, as someone who's trying to get caught up on the market.
Or within a line chart, also color coded of which users might have contributed the most to those bumps.
Totally.
That's a little bit blowing up people's spots a little bit, but
Right.
I feel like you could do that. Might be a project for us to work on.
That would be a good. I mean, that would be a good build, just to have like the events mapped out to each spike. Plus that, I think that would be like really good for any analytics platform.
Yeah, totally. So there's one other market related to this, which I haven't given as much thought to, but it is, will any of the stolen Louvre jewels be recovered? My one observation with this was like, okay, look at the, the resolution criteria. It's like, because people are, again, expecting that the thieves are disassembling these things. They're selling them for parts, which is a shame because, these are historical artifacts and diamonds, raw diamonds aren't, there's a huge premium on the fact that this is a historical artifact. Now they're selling it just for the rocks. It is a huge bummer. But it's also like, okay, if an artifact is recovered, it's likely in pieces, unfortunately. And so the criteria to resolve this market is, okay, it will result to yes if any of the jewels are officially recovered by the listed date. A single item, i.e. one earring, will suffice, regardless of if it is missing a diamond or other element. However, recovery of only a fragment or part of an item, for example, a loose stone or a piece of a crown, will not suffice. I just feel like this is going to be a tough one to arbitrate. I feel like it's already feeling tough. Like, okay, now what happens when it's like most of I don't know. They've gotten at least a little bit of the nuance here. But I would almost avoid this market just because of some of the nuance of like, okay, you're getting really into exactly what will be recovered.
Yeah. It's a little bit. It's kind of a hard. It's very hard to understand the rules here. I think. I think. I think this like just based off this conversation, I would probably just go no on this market, but just because of that alone. But yeah, I agree with you. I think because how would you verify that, right? How would you verify like stolen Louvre? Yeah, it's tough. So the thing that was stolen was like, what was it, like national jewels, or like what was the actual object? I think you might have mentioned it.
Yeah, great question. Let me jump back to here. There's some better reporting. Oh, here we go. This actually has the photos, right? So, it was like 12 or 16 pieces, a tiara, necklace, an earring. So I guess they're literally getting at that because there is a single earring from Maria Amalia of Naples and Sicily, the Queen of France. Okay. An emerald necklace, a brooch, a tiara. One of these items, which I think was one of the bigger ones, was like some kind of crown. And that's the one that was straight up left behind at the crime scene.
That's interesting.
Where my head immediately goes though is like I would want to do some research on like the cooperation amongst different like inter-European investigative agencies, because these guys are probably out of the country. Like they're probably out of the country. It's pretty easy to move within the Schengen region in Europe. And so now all of a sudden it can't be just a French police investigation. Or I just wonder, so now all of a sudden if they need to be doing boots on the ground police work in Belgium, like how much is that going to slow them down, or not? I don't know.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think, man, I remember watching a documentary. It's not going to be helpful because I completely forget the documentary, but it was about another high-profile robbery. I think in France, actually. I think it was the same place. And there was some weird extradition stuff in Europe. So even though you have like the EU and everything, again, I haven't deep dived into it, but there was like one particular place where that you could go to, where it's like if you go there, it's I forget which country it was, but it was like if you go there, it's done, game over. So like that's yeah, I think it'd be an interesting market to research for sure.
Definitely. Sweet. Josiah, thank you so much for sharing that. Mine's going to be pretty quick, I think, and then we could hop into the mention markets one. But yeah, let's transition. Let me share my screen real quick. Okay, so mine is more so about recency bias than anything. It is which CEOs will be gone in 2025. And there's one particular CEO that I have in mind that had a really interesting price action. And I could give some background as to what's going on here. But the idea is that looking at the rules of the market, looks like I selected Sam Altman earlier. If an announcement of the CEO's resignation or firing before the market's end date will immediately resolve the CS. So if there's like a official tweet or official like announcement within 2025, that counts. They don't have to actually resign like within the year or get fired or whatever.
Wow, yeah, this is an interesting market.
Yeah, so right here, so you see right here, Dan Clancy from Twitch dropped at 28%. Actually, when I was messaging Josiah about this earlier in the day, it was at around like 50-ish. And as late as, as early as yesterday at 5 p.m., it was up to like 70%, which I think was like a pretty strong reaction in terms of recency bias of what happened. Okay, so now to go into like what exactly happened. So over the past weekend, there was an event called Twitchcon. This happens every year. It's a convention for the streamers on Twitch and also fans of streamers to like attend and kind of like meet their streamers or whatever. Don, you mentioned before about live streaming being like a fun kind of low stakes way of engaging with stuff. I actually used to stream video games like years ago and would go to TwitchCon, and it was pretty fun. But I will say that there wasn't a lot of security and stuff there. So what happened was one of the streamers was doing a meet and greet. Her streamer name is Emiru, I believe. And someone kind of just crossed all of the paths and barriers, went up to her and just tried to like give her a bear hug, essentially assaulted her. And so that became a bunch of news like all over Reddit, all over like different articles and such. And their CEO, Dan Clancy, live streams himself and also like chats with a lot of these high profile streamers, including Emiru. And a lot of people, believe that this was going to result in his like firing and or resignation because of the lack of security over at TwitchCon. This is still ongoing. So there's still like news articles that are being put out. He's being interviewed on other podcasts. She's also posting content because she's a live streamer and continues to talk about this stuff. But yeah, with all this news coming out, it kind of like spiked up to like 68, 69%. And it looks like it's kind of been correcting since then as like a potential recency bias. I when digging deeper into this, like the CEO seems to be pretty public about like discussing this and how like bad this was, how safety is like their top priority, as any person within a company would mention. And like I don't think that this would be, this is a very unfortunate circumstance and a very unfortunate situation. But given the nature of like parasocial relationships and stuff with live streaming, like this is something that I think they have been kind of like on the lookout for. And it's just like an unfortunate series of events that I don't think would be enough to kind of take this to resignation or firing of the CEO, who I'd imagine is taking this pretty seriously and like wanting to do stuff about this. But this reaction was from folks who use the platform and maybe might immediately say like, okay, this person has to get fired, right? Because this was a pretty, egregious event. Yeah, has corrected since then. I'll stop there because I'm curious to hear others' thoughts or takes, or if you guys were familiar about the situation.
It's so high. 36% is so high.
It's pretty high.
It's high.
Yeah, within 2025. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe this went up to 70%. I believe if that's just community speculation that there's a controversy and the CEO of the company will step down. For a social media company, which like so many others has kind of, Twitter, Reddit, Discord, all of them have very vocal user bases. I feel like there's another one of these controversies every other week. And I don't know that there's any precedent for the CEOs stepping down as a result of those things.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Twitch just captures so much mind share, right? And people have like there's a lot of like former huge Twitch stars on YouTube and Twitch and stuff that don't like Twitch that much for whatever reason. And they occupy like so much mind share just on the internet. So I'm wondering if that has anything to do with this, right? If maybe, and again, like at this point in prediction markets, we're early enough where that stuff really matters. I was thinking about, I was having a conversation the other day where we were talking about how like that when that whole dark woke thing happened with Gavin Newsom, you could see Gavin Newsom's chart just spike up dramatically just in that one day. Just when everyone was sending like dark woke Gavin Newsom memes. I'm wondering if it's a similar thing here, right? If former Twitch people who still have like large YouTube accounts got on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, they were just like, yeah, this is a problem with Twitch. I told you, it's going downhill. Or Kick people, for instance, people on Kick or people on like these other streaming platforms. So I don't know. I'm wondering if that's the reason why it spiked up. I have a question too. So
Yeah.
I see that huge spike. Is that earlier spike a different thing?
Yeah, so around October, so that was like earlier within the day on October 19th. I think this spike, so there were two kind of sequences of events that took place. And I could be wrong with like the with how it lines up, but there was the event that took place and then folks, posting and chiming in about it. So I think that the event took place here. And then there was like subsequent statements, one being from Emiru herself, and then more clips about like there was a comment that she made where like, oh, 2 years ago at TwitchCon, I have a favorite bodyguard, because she'll hire bodyguards when going to like public spaces, given how high profile she is, and how that bodyguard got banned from TwitchCon 2 years ago for holding someone before law enforcement came to take them away because they were stalking her. So this is already an incident that has happened in the past before. And so after the event happened and then also more like content was coming out, it seemed that people were kind of buying up the S shares here to say like, okay, this is looking really bad and this might, have the CEO resign. And then this final this larger bump here was him on I'm forgetting which streamer's channel, but like kind of talking about this and saying like, hey, this is really unfortunate. We're taking this seriously. And I don't think people were very satisfied with that response. And it probably just reinforced that bias that like he might get ousted within the year. There's also some speculation around Amazon stepping in, since Twitch is, Amazon had acquired Twitch a while ago. And that, once Amazon kind of gets involved in this whole thing, that this CEO Dan Clancy would definitely be out. But again, these are all very strong reactions to whether they're right or not. I don't know. I guess we'll see it play out. What I like personally, I'm kind of have the same reaction as Josiah of like, this feels really high for the CEO of like a larger tech company to step down for. And as Josiah mentioned, like within social media companies, there's all sorts of like craziness that happens on some of these platforms, and it's just a matter of like the company actually stepping in and doing something about it, which takes time. Human behavior in online spaces can be like really tough to manage and maintain, and it'd be difficult to kind of just like oust someone for that.
And to your point, John, like I do think it's true that there's a little bit of a like almost exaggerated effect sometimes in these prediction markets, especially if there's lower volume, but sometimes if there isn't. Like, yes, Gavin Newsom pumps on, his ability to use TikTok, for instance, to be the Dem nom for 2026 or whatever. And you just go, wow, the market is reacting way too aggressively to what is otherwise kind of a small thing. And then it can sometimes be reflexive. I think people see the odds going up and they kind of think, well, then that must be like something must have happened. And there's kind of these noise traders who will just come in because they see markets moving. I think for a sharper trader to try to sort the signal from the noise and just determine whether or not there's too much like just hyperbole being traded on.
Yeah. I think that one of the strategies that you mentioned, I totally agree with that. I think so much of this is like who the audience of prediction markets are. Like who's what like where is this particular market getting shared the most? I think one of the interesting things you said is like the other way to approach this market could be acquisitions, right? Which I hadn't even thought about. But like it's like which company is going to get acquired? Because I think if you because do the rules like specify like how the CEO is supposed to leave or
no, yeah, it looks like it's just resignation or firing, but like that is a good point. Yeah, if there is an acquisition and they get removed from their position, if it's not a resignation, or I guess it would be a resignation if they're stepping away as CEO, but what would happen if like a parent company decides to shift them somewhere else? I don't know. I feel like that would be an UMA debate, and then in the Discord channel of UMA, it would just be like a flame war between people of like if it counts as a resignation or firing.
Yeah, it's interesting. So in terms of like some of these other CEOs, do you have any thoughts on like Tim Cook? Like it looks like the lowest one is Amazon, which makes sense.
Yeah. Tim Cook is the only other CEO that I've like looked into a little bit here. And this is after talking. Josiah's mentioned it to me a few times where the little that I've seen is that there seems to be like a daisy chain of like reporters reporting about the rumor of a potential successor for Apple. And it all kind of traces back to one particular Bloomberg journalist who his whole thing is predicting writing about Apple. He used to write about he used to be like a lead writer on like 9 to 5 Mac and like Mac rumors and stuff, and now like only reports for Bloomberg just about Apple things. But it seems like they've been talking about potential Apple CEO successors for the past like year and a half, 2 years now. The hypothetical being that like, oh, like someone has to succeed Tim Cook. Who could it be? And some more of that content's being spun up again. And it's just interesting when going through different news sources. Although you might see like a volume of headlines, a lot of times it's just sourced from like one person, hopefully reputable, but sometimes it's not. And I think that was like the exercise here to say like, is this truly from like unique places, or are they all just kind of like regurgitating the same slop for clicks?
Right. Like there's nothing that's come out of Apple or Tim Cook that indicates whatsoever that he would step down. So it's just talking heads on CNBC thinking maybe Tim Cook will step down, and partly because the stock has not performed well, right? The stock has underperformed, I guess, the rest of a bunch of the NASDAQ and certainly the Mag 7. But then it's almost cope, I think, for like public market traders who are in Apple to say, well, maybe the CEO steps down. Sometimes the stock isn't doing well enough, the CEO steps down. I know it's also like his 65th birthday, I think, is coming up. So I even saw one article that was like, will Tim Cook step down to kind of resign for his 65th birthday? And it's just like, this is basically slop. Yeah, I feel like it's like it's pushing a narrative almost that's like there's not a huge basis for it. That said, I don't know if I would take the no. Like, I don't actually know if I would buy the no on this at 92 cents. It's just, I think it's probably a little bit mispriced, but there's some basis, I guess, with the stock price and some of these other things. But if it ticks over 10, I'll take the no. How about that?
I think it's interesting. Probably another market that I think I would participate in is who will be the successor of Apple. And having a longer resolution period, so maybe like 2, 3, 5 years out or something, that might be fun to participate in. Only because of all the rumors that would come out from it, and I feel like you could trade, the swings from that. But
yeah, I know that Brian Armstrong. I remember hearing him several times, and I haven't been following it, but I know that Brian Armstrong said a while back, he says things like, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for a bit. I'm wondering how much that would push the market. Like just like one interview with him saying, I've been doing this for a long time. Maybe I want to move into life extension or whatever, because I know he's working on like some of that stuff. I think he has another project which is more in bio, which is kind of like working on that. But like the other way to play this is, yeah, which CEO is going to get up there and talk about future plans the most.
Yeah.
You know, so that could be another way to do it. But I think the event play is good. I think, like, you know, especially with those companies that attract like a lot of sometimes negative attention, like right before an event, could be a nice little play to just buy like yes or no based on what you think the outcomes, or yes if the outcome's going to be bad.
Definitely.
Cool.
Yeah, but that's yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And yeah, that's kind of like the extent of my research for this one, only because Josiah and I last minute collided and realized that we had the same one. But Josiah, I think you presented yours really, really well. And
Right. The other thing that stands out on that CEO thing though is Sam Altman at 2%. That is interesting. Just that it's not.
That's so weird because I would expect him, just based off his personality, you think he'd be higher.
No, yeah.
Yeah, that's a controversial figure for sure. And they had so much drama internally at OpenAI. I mean, there's a whole board fight. You know, I guess he was out for one.
He was out, yeah.
Time. So certainly you can price in some of that like kind of internal volatility, and maybe it's not remarkable that he's at 2%. A lot of these end of year markets, you know, a ton of markets have expiration at the end of year. And it starts to get interesting because we're approaching end of year, you know, and there is that kind of time decay of like the nothing ever happens bros who make money just betting no on almost everything and exploiting. There's apparently a very slight yes bias, you know, in prediction markets generally. I think I've seen that said about mention markets as well. So maybe that's a good segue into that.
Yeah, I think mention markets. So if you, so we'll do this kind of like a last thing. I just wanted to get your guys' take on this upcoming Tesla mention market, and I think I could pull it up. Let me pull it up real quick. You know, and again, like I just got into mention markets, so I was playing the Zoran Mamdani and Cuomo mayoral debate, and kind of to your point, what I did is I did bet a lot of no's. So I took no's on almost everything except for one thing, which was will they say Uganda or Venezuela, which they did. So let me just share my screen real quick. Let me get to that mention market.
While you do that, Josiah, have you like actively participated in the mentioned market, like stream?
Yeah, during the election, I traded quite a few of the Trump speech mentioned markets, which is hard mode because he's a highly stochastic speaker, and could just easily be. You have to be live trading it, really. The Trump mentioned markets.
Let's see here. We see Diner. Bigger.
So I have no idea how to trade this. I've never followed a Tesla meeting. I mean, like, I'm assuming that you have to like sign in, you know, you have to join the earnings call to like really do well at this, but I've never been on a Tesla earning call. So I have no idea how to play this. Completely blind. I don't even know if I will yet, but I'm wondering what your guys' opinion on any of these are. Just kind of like in the quick 8 minutes we have.
The frequentist approach that we kind of talked about before of looking backwards would force me to want to start with transcripts of the past earnings calls, feed them to GPT, and just ask for a raw word count on each of these. But this is also a uniquely Bayesian market in the sense that, you know, every earnings call is different. It's reacting to current events. And so that's not an amazing, it's a starting place, but it's not going to give you a ton of stuff. The Tesla Diner, for instance, is relatively new. So if we're looking too far backwards, there's never going to be a mention of a Tesla Diner in historical transcripts.
Yeah, I've not actually live traded mention markets myself, but like I think the first thing that stands out to me is like a lot of these, like I'm seeing like some, like there's some areas that don't have enough liquidity, so we're just seeing like 50-50 or like 60% splits. Like I'd be setting maybe limit orders on some of these. I feel like so like as in my head, I don't know if this is actually how it behaves, but like as the earnings call progresses, you'd expect that every single one of these words that haven't been mentioned would be declining. And you'd want to probably catch some of that at some point in time. Maybe if you could have it expire halfway through, 3/4 through the earnings call itself, that might be something that you could do. I actually don't know if you can set these to expire within that granular of a time frame.
I think you can. I think you can. This is
expiration.
A good kind of play the ball. The where you trip up, I think, in that strat is sometimes, the topic will turn to something relevant to this, and it'll suddenly spike, and it may or may not hit. But like an analyst might ask a question about the diner, for instance, and then all of a sudden, the diner's going up. Whether or not the Tesla representative, because I think the rules for this is that it has to be a representative of the company, whether or not they reiterate the word diner changes. But if we control that out, you're right, Matt. Like, there's a time decay to every single one of these, right?
Or there should be, yeah. And if there isn't, then there's probably something to do there.
Yeah, my just like going purely off of vibes, my read is diner feels high, dude. Like, this is the earnings call where they are this is the earnings call, not the quarterly meeting or whatever. But November 6th, I think, is the quarterly meeting where shareholders are voting on like Elon's comp and a ton of other like changes to their bylaws and stuff. And I guess I just think with everything going on and they're putting out new vehicles and stuff, the diner is like a footnote at best. To be at 65% feels really high.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you here. I think it's also like I haven't done any research. I'd like to know the representative that's giving the call. I'd like to, because there's a couple things in here like that are clearly words. Like, for instance, what's this one? Bigger and longer. I don't know what is
that. Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's no. A lot of people are saying no. I would probably agree with that. But yeah, I think I agree with you here. Like, diner is a footnote. I don't see that being and tariff also. A lot of people are saying tariff.
Yeah, that's really high.
Yeah, it might be a little high here as well. But one of the interesting things I noticed about mention markets is that, and I don't know where Polymarket is on this particular, like, I think they just started the earnings call mention markets. Am I wrong on that, or am I right? Or is this
they're pretty new? They're pretty new. I haven't seen them except maybe in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, what I noticed, especially with the South Park mention market, I think that was like one of the first times they did the South Park mention market. It's a lot of times you're going to get tons of no's on these really new markets because of the lack of context behind them. But I could be wrong. That's just like, we'll see what happens. But yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, it's weird because there's a whole like exercise of selecting what the word markets will be that the editorial crew clearly does. I think they get community input to do this. But it almost builds in a certain level of bias of like, well, these are the phrases that have been selected. I think people are just prone to be biased toward, now you're imagining, will that be word be used or not, as opposed to insert the blank any word,
Yeah, at some point, I wouldn't be surprised if one day, as Polymarket gets bigger, if someone, instead of it being like Tesla, but like an individual person's mentions markets, like, I wouldn't be surprised if one day someone just opens it up and says, all right, give me 1 second before I start my speech, and just say every single word within the mention market just to cause chaos.
Right.
I mean, if I was a troll and like there was a mention market of me, that's probably what I would do and disrupt things a little bit. But
yeah. Or that an analyst asks a question intending to get, an analyst could take a position on a mention market and try to what's it called, the conflict of interest and ask a leading question
mid earnings call. Can you please say diner? Just that's my question.
These are those types of insider markets for sure. Well, all mentioned markets are to a certain degree. All right, so I think we're coming up here. I just wanted to share this one. So Predict Folio joined in. I think this is like the real Predict Folio. I think shout out to Predict, but they just said Interpol is likely on the Louvre case. So that's kind of the.
That feels correct. That feels correct. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool! I didn't know you could do that. You brought up his or their comment in the stream.
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah. I just learned that feature the other day.
That's so cool.
Might as well use So cool, guys. It was awesome having you on. I mean, that was like. Honestly, that was I think we should, if you guys are free, I'd love to keep doing this. I'd love to like
totally. I know this is great. And we're big fans of the different interviews and content that you're putting out. So more than happy to give back.
Awesome. All right, well, let's sign off, and yeah, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, John.
See ya. Bye.